Today we're going to talk about this lovely little chart that we see for Bitcoin. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this just so wonderful? In all seriousness, though, this has been obviously yet another depressing moment for Bitcoin, where if we look at it over the past, 24 hours or so, it's just been a solid downtrend, and we just saw prices jump off of a cliff here, and they're starting to recover a little bit. Is it an opportunity? As usual, the same questions as always. How do I make money off of this? Well, I'm here to tell you I'm not touching this at all. And I'm not touching it at all because I already made my move that I wanted to at this level back here. And I'm not going to touch this until it goes down to 8,300. So if it recovers back up to 13,000, 14,000, hell, 50,000, well, actually, if it goes up that high, we'll make a separate video at that point. But the point is, I'm not going to be touching this at all. I'm not buying Bitcoin until it goes down to 8,300, or I see some sort of signal that the market is going to be moving into bullish territory. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, one of the parts that I've noted here over the, medium term, whatever you want to call it, I would say really the short term, over the past month or two, really since that December run-up that we saw back here, volume has been so much higher during declines than when the market goes up. But really you can see that exemplified best here, where the market, on the 6-hour candles, you can really see that exemplified well here, where the volume started to pick up when Bitcoin's price started to fall. And then as soon as Bitcoin's price started to go back up again, the volume is starting to taper off. And when we see a divergence between price and volume like this, it's just never a good sign, because it almost always means that the momentum behind a particular move is weaker than we'd like to see it. So in general here, I'm not feeling the greatest about this market. And I, again, have already bought any Bitcoin that I wanted to at these levels back when it came down just last week. So for me, not touching this. I'll buy it if it goes down to 8,300. That's still my magic level, as I mentioned in my prior video. And if it goes down to that level, I will buy a lot of Bitcoin. I will have almost 0% cash in my portfolio, and I will feel 100% comfortable with that. Wherever Bitcoin wants to go from there, it can go. So that's really the level I'm watching for. It's still going to be the case. I'm not calling for it to go down to that level. I will note again that these bullish momentum movements tend to go with smaller volume, which concerns me. And we've really been seeing that over the past month and a half. So I just want to note this because it's been a situation that we've been seeing over and over and over again. It concerns me. Could mean that we see a lower potential in the market. So I'm just going to do one of two things. I'm going to either hold or I'm going to buy more if we come down to 8,300. And that's it. That's my simple answer. That's what I'll be doing when it comes to Bitcoin. Now, in terms of other cryptocurrencies, what are my thoughts? Well, it depends on, it's from a cryptocurrency to cryptocurrency basis. For example, Ripple here. I don't believe in the long term of Ripple, but one of the parts that I will note here is that Ripple bounced back the strongest of any cryptocurrency back when we saw the last crash. It was up 60%, which was the highest of any cryptocurrency in a 24-hour change. So it looks like to me Ripple is currently a cryptocurrency that gets hit the hardest when Bitcoin comes down, but it's also a cryptocurrency that's been recovering the most when Bitcoin comes back up. So that's worth noting here. That could be a trading opportunity. I'm not going to be taking a chance on it at this point, but if we see Ripple come down to exceptionally low levels, which I would say it's not at that point yet when we're here at 11,500. But if we see it pull down below 10,000 and get back into those 4-figure Satoshi levels, I might consider it, just because it's a cryptocurrency, again, that I have found over and over. It tends to bounce back a lot stronger because people get really bullish about anything that Ripple ever has to say. If there's any partnerships that get announced or any situation where they launch a program or a pilot program, everybody gets excited about Ripple. And that's really the case with the whole market. Now, speaking of partnerships and where the market gets excited about things, Vechain. Okay, let's talk about this briefly. So, for those of you who don't know, I made a video 2 weeks ago, really 3 weeks ago, on Roblox where I said it was going to be a pump and dump. And a lot of people took offense to that video because I didn't talk about the tech in that video. I talked about the idea that scalability is not as important as everybody thinks it is. And more importantly, I called it a pump and dump, which probably was the wrong way to go about it. What I should have said is that it was likely overinflated. And when I made that video, this is where I made it. This is exactly where I made it. January 2nd. And here we are now. So, unfortunately, I will never get credit for that. Ever. Because I didn't say it the right way. And because, of course, this is too short term. Even it's funny here. People will say they will expect me to be able to predict Bitcoin to $23,000 within the next day. But when it comes to being right about something, like if something happens within the next 2 weeks or next 3 weeks, they'll say it's too short term to know whether or not I'm right yet. And I agree with you. It is too short term. Maybe this bounces right back up and we see it go all the way back to where it was back here and even higher. My point is that whenever there's a flavor of the week, everybody talks about it, it gets inflated like this, and then it starts to sell off as it kind of fades away from the news. And you might be saying, well, this was all because of the result of Roblox having all those complications with the exchanges and those scam wallets and all that other stuff that has nothing to do with the cryptocurrency itself. Those were the real reasons it fell. And that definitely contributed, but I think a lot of it really just has to do with the fact that you just can't sustain momentum like this. Plain and simple. When it shoots up like this, you can't sustain that. Vechain is the current flavor of the week that everybody is talking about. Okay? And I'm not going to call it a pump and dump this time. What I'm going to say is that, as with all movements of this nature, there is always an end. And I'm going to tell you that this is the flavor of the week that everybody's talking about. And I'm here to tell you that Vechain, using RFID technology, it's using the same arguments that are decades old. All right? And there's reasons why RFID technology is not completely mainstream at this point when it comes to EPC. And there are so many problems with it that, there are different applications for it. You can use it for documents, you can use it for wines, you can use it for luxury handbags, you can use it for all sorts of things. But those arguments were made back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when people were talking about the idea that they could reduce counterfeits and increase inventory tracking by 95%, the accuracy of inventory tracking up to 95%. These arguments are not new. And yet what we're seeing here was we're seeing RFID technology tacked on with blockchain. And all of a sudden it's new, and that's going to cause everything to change. And I'm here to tell you that while the blockchain portion of it will work and it will be cool, it's still not going to fix the RFID problem, which is security, the ability to intercept between the tag and the reader, and the fact that adoption has been slow for RFID for decades as a result of the fact that it's not as cost effective as everybody thought it would be, as a result of the fact that the multiple industries that can use it are confused about how you amortize the cost savings that RFID technology can offer you, and whether or not it's worth making that straight up infrastructure cost in your business in order to implement it. So all I'm going to say here is be careful. I know I'm going to upset some people. It's going to be the same crap all over again. You're going to be telling me about how Vechain is going to change how business is done across the world. And I'm telling you, the blockchain component's going to work fine. It's the RFID component that really is going to fall short. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of these cryptocurrencies, what they're trying to do is they're tacking on current technologies with blockchain and saying it's completely new. In fact, one of the things I want everybody to realize is that Bitcoin blockchain is really not a new invention, right? I mean, it is in the sense that solving the double spend problem is new. But when we look at everything else that's associated with Bitcoin, public key cryptography is over 50 years old. And you might say to that, well, of course it is. And all the backing of a lot of these cryptocurrencies is decades old. But most people really don't realize that. For example, Monero, cryptocurrency that I love. Ring signatures have been around a very long time. Okay, they've been around a long time. Even longer than that, group signatures. Stealth addresses have been around a long time. Again, these are all concepts that have been around a long time, and we are just repurposing them for cryptocurrencies and blockchain applications. As a result of that, they oftentimes are going to have the same drawbacks as they did a couple of decades ago when they originally were conceptualized. Just want everybody to realize that these things are not as new as everybody thinks they are. Really, the problem is that we are taking old concepts and applying new jargon to it. My point being here that Vechain, as revolutionary as it sounds, it's not. Plain and simple. And that's the case with a lot of cryptocurrencies. Realize that there's always going to be a difference between truth and perception. And right now, Vechain is at the very pinnacle of perception. And you want to be careful with cryptocurrencies that get to the pinnacle of perception, because there's only one way they can go from there, which is down. And that's what happened to Rayblox. Now, does that mean that Rayblox is not impressive? No. What it really means is that once we reach the pinnacle of perception, remember, that's what markets are all about, perception, then we see the prices fall down from where they initially were. And we've seen Rayblox see a pull down from what? All the way up at the max here at 240,000 Satoshi, and now we're at 137,000 Satoshi. Yes, there has been a wider pullback in the market. A lot of cryptocurrencies peaked against Bitcoin early in January and have charts similar to this. But the point here being that this was a more substantial scale down than a lot of other cryptocurrencies. But more importantly, this is what's in the cards for Vechain potentially at some point here. Now, do I know this for certain? No. And there's certainly money to be made here because of the fact that everybody thinks that this is the coolest thing ever. And that's how the cryptocurrency market works. And the sooner you realize that, the more successful you're going to be. Sorry for that rant there, or it's not even really a rant. It's just letting you know the truth of how these things operate. Just want everybody to realize, if you're jumping on board on the Vechain now, be very careful. In terms of other opportunities in the market, I'm looking for certain cryptocurrencies to pull down for levels at which I can accumulate more. For example, Monero, I have always been waiting to see this come down, and it just never freaking does. So that's a cryptocurrency I'm watching closely. There's a couple of others that I am as well. Steam, you guys know I promote it at the end of my videos all the time. Well, I do actually like Steam. There's a reason I do promote it. That's another cryptocurrency that I've been watching closely, but it's still relatively high for me to buy in. So really, at the moment, I'm not going to buy anything. That's it. I'm just going to be patient. Even though there's a dip here, you don't have to buy by definition every time there's a dip. If you feel properly allocated to the market, and that's how I feel, I'm not buying anymore till Bitcoin comes down to 8,300, or we see some cryptocurrencies, some altcoins that I like, that pull down to Satoshi levels that are attractive. And until then, no purchases for me. Those are my thoughts on the market. And be exceptionally careful when you're investing in the hot cryptocurrencies like Vechain. As usual, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure that you check out my Steemit if you want to interact with me. Always a higher chance that I respond to you on there, just because the number of comments is manageable. And there's also a fiscal incentive for me to get you on that platform. So get your ass over there if you want to interact with me. Otherwise, as usual, if you like the video, make sure that you, leave a like, subscription, and comment, and then I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.